Welcome to Spindle TV's exclusive class this evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for popping in on us, or popping in and hanging out with us tonight. Tonight, I'm joined with JR and John, and Charlie was with me, but he popped out. He'll be right back. I'm assuming he probably had a little bit of a connection issue, but we'll see him back in just a moment. Good evening, Brooks and David, Gene, Roger, and everyone else. Hopefully y'all are doing well. Tonight, we are going to, back to basics, we're going to start off with a beginning guide to 3D modeling in Vectric Aspire. We're going to go through everything that you need to know in a fashionable order to be able to start creating components and models in the Vectric software. We're even going to talk about some of the, more current affair type stuff, or, things that are current, like how to, hey, there's Charlie, how to use AI to help with generating grayscale images for 3D models, and we're going to talk about a good site for that, and then we're just going to talk about the pros and cons of it and everything. But it's going to be a beginner's class. Hopefully by the end of this evening you will have the information within this video that you could go in and start creating a three-dimensional component of some sort. Now we're not gonna be, sculpting clay just yet or anything like that, and and making Mona Lisas and whatever. But we're gonna be able to create a model and work from there. Okay, from vectors and things like that. So let's first of all, before we get started, let's say welcome, Charlie. I told everybody you were coming back, that you were here. But we'll start off with John. John, how's your evening going tonight? Doing all right?
Down the base. I was out in the shop all day making metal parts for this old military Dodge truck. And then I was just down in the basement there. I had the laser running. I made some Easter egg holders.
Nice. Outstanding. So you're kind of getting prepared. Easter's coming up, so you're getting started.
yeah,
Nice.
just for the grandkids and the great nieces and nephews.
Excellent. Welcome, Kool-Aid. Thanks for popping in, bud. JR, how are you this evening? What you working on today? How are you tonight?
I'm doing good. Not working on a whole lot because I had hand surgery. So,
oh man,
yeah, tell me about it. It's at the stage right now. We're just looking at it hurts. So,
sure. Is that your dominant hand?
Well,
like what you write with and stuff?
Yep.
Oh man.
So,
well, hopefully that's a tough one, because it kind of makes you have to. If I had to do anything with my right, I'm left-handed. If I had to depend on my right hand for anything, because I would be screwed in so many ways. But yeah, so hopefully you're doing well and you're managing and getting through and everything.
Yeah, but at least, hey, my LED parts started coming in, so
nice, very nice. Yes, absolutely. Charlie, Buddy Rowe, how are you doing? What you working on?
Well, I'm in the painting stages of 8 different projects here. I got four flags for Mission Barbecue that I'm doing, and I got 4 home plate design flags, 3 for the Phillies and 1 for the Yankees. The painting is atrocious. I mean, even using masking, it's like 4 different colors. It's a pain.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, I am not a good finisher. Now, all right, carving aside, just woodworking in general, besides like close to the grain finishes, like let's say, a beeswax and mineral oil type thing, or a butcher block type finish for the things, like that. When it comes to just finishes in general, I'm a lacquer kind of guy. Cad acrylic lacquer. I have, HPLV sprayer, or I'll use rattle cans. Polyurethane, me and Polly, that's one woman I don't get along with. I'm not too shabby with a wipe on poly or a kind of a 50-50 poly mix with like mineral spirits, and everything, kind of making almost like a wipe on, a poly. But brush on, I had the hardest time with. I don't know why. And so and painting, I'm when it comes to carving and everything, I'm a aura mask kind of guy, and spray paint and then pill, right? So if I have multiple colors that have to get done, then I'll carve them in multiple stages and all, and I'll cover what's already been carved and paint and all. So but I'm not by any means. I have a customer, guys, that he is hearing impaired, and he is the most amazing project painter. His projects, when he carves, we create, we do his design classes and everything one-on-one and stuff. And then he'll come back and send me, show me photos of the projects that he's done. His painting is spot on. I mean, he's just like on it. And I'm like, man, I wish I had that kind of talent. But him and his wife are both excellent artists in that regard. So their projects look freaking top notch, man. I'm like, dang. But some people have it, some people don't. This old boy doesn't when it comes to finishing. Now, for me, as far as what I'm working on is I go pick up that 4x4 machine on Friday. So today I spent the day wiring a winch onto my utility trailer that I'm going to be using. And then I have a unique situation. Y'all might have heard, if y'all keep ear to the ground on the what's happening in the woodworking world, but the woodworking shows were canceled for Tampa, Kansas City, and Nashville. They were the last 3 shows were canceled. And Tampa was supposed to be this weekend in a couple of days. So the machines that we had pre-sold were going to be shipped down on a truck. Customers were going to pick them up at the show, that kind of thing, and everything was good to go. Well, when the shows got canceled, the semi trucks that had all of our equipment, they were in Pennsylvania. They were on their way to, now we're from Indiana, right? Digital Woodcarver, but they were on their way to Florida, but they didn't make it. So we had to, Burl Tishner, the owner of the company, had to go pick up the machines and all that stuff. And he's going to be driving the machines down. And he asked me if I knew anybody with a forklift nearby that we could have our customers meet us at this location and forklift the CNC machine. It's our big commercial type units. They're really heavy. Forklift them off of our trailer and onto the customer's trailer, right? Kind of thing. And Lowe's, shout out to Lowe's. I kind of went to them with a proposition of, small business, Ocala, Florida business, helping business, and everything. And asked them if I could use their forklifts. And I wouldn't be using their forklift, even though I am certified to drive a forklift. But if I could, have my customers and us meet at Lowe's and the forklift drivers do the exchange for us, and they were happy to do so. So that was pretty cool. So it hasn't happened yet, but that was pretty nice of them to offer that. But that made me think about like this big 4x4 machine and stuff and getting it off my trailer and things like that. I've already got a method for that, but it made me start thinking about my next project. I'm going to make a gantry crane for out on my property where trailers can back up. I can, winch up, equipment, and another trailer could back up and I can just drop it down. And also, so a fixed one that's going to be in the ground. It's going to be made out of wood, and then a mobile one. So I was just YouTubing a bunch of videos, how-to videos on mobile gantry cranes for the shop, right? Because I, might have to move equipment and stuff around and everything. So that's going to be my next big project, is a gantry crane. So,
well worth it.
Well, if Burl's bringing those machines down to you, tell him to bring that big pallet jack they use to unload mine.
Yeah, well, yeah, and I have a pallet jack here too. So we have that, but we're hoping because we don't know what kind of trailer the customer is bringing, right? The gentleman didn't really. We haven't asked for pictures of the trailer or anything like that, but we're hoping that we could just come in forklift and one trailer to another and it'd be quick and simple. Because Burrow's literally going to do a turnaround trip. He's driving down just for those drop off those machines, and then he's heading right back to Indiana.
What I was thinking is unloading your 4x4.
Oh no, no. So on my 4x4, I've got mine covered. It's loading it. I've got tomorrow. Tomorrow I'm going to start tonight, but tomorrow I'm building some wooden ramps. I got one of those lawnmower trailers, right, with the big tall gate on the back that drops down.
Right.
But I've loaded and offloaded so much off of that trailer that it's got a wire mesh. The gate's not really. It's just a wire mesh and everything. So the wire is kind of sinking down. So I can't really roll anything up that gate because it kind of it gets caught. So I have to put like sheets of wood down. Right. And everything and all. And it's not really that great. So tomorrow I'm making some long ramps that will be kind of almost like a low incline. So it won't be like so sharp. It'll just gradually get up to the back of the trailer. And I've got that new winch I just mounted today. So the winch should just roll it right on up. And then when I get into when the building that it's going to go into here, I should be able to just roll it right off with my pallet jack and everything. So I'm hoping all that goes very well. All right, let's get into this, ladies and gentlemen. That was enough chit chat, but hey, it's great to have you all join me tonight. And hopefully this class will be something that helps you, right? So, all right, let's go ahead and let me switch over to, go ahead.
Before you get started, you ever hear of a drop trailer?
I've heard of them and I've seen pictures of them, but isn't that where the back, it kind of like, the back end kind of drops down real like.
Yeah, they can either tilt down or it can drop the entire thing down. Okay. Right. I rented one from Sun Rentals for like $50 when I had to move a 3 horsepower Bridgeport into my.
Really?
Yeah.
Sunbelt Rentals?
Sunbelt.
I got a Sunbelt Rentals right down the road.
Be worth it. I mean, I just used my pallet jack, rolled it up, got back to the studio, rolled it right on off. It was like the best thing.
No joke.
Yeah.
Is that the one with the like air or hydraulic cylinders that let the bed of the trailer go down to the ground?
You can get them both ways.
Oh, okay.
I'm gonna look into that. I didn't know that. Oh man, because I rent that Sunbelt is where I rent my like when I need a track hoe from time to time, or a man lift and stuff. That's where I rent all my heavy equipment and stuff from. Didn't even think about a trailer. Now I thought about U-Haul, but U-Haul's got the little ramp on the back, and I thought, no, that's not gonna work at all. But that's a good. It's called a drop trailer.
Yep.
Oh man, that's great to know. That's great to know. That's really good to know. All right.
For gantry crane.
Yeah.
Harbor Freight, 2,000-pound electric winch. Put it across the rafters, and once I get something inside and I need to lift something up, there you go.
Yeah, that's what I'm working on. Hey, Ronnie, welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, howdy.
That's what I'm hoping that'll happen. And I want a crane that's wide enough for my trailers, any of the trailers that come on the property to fit in between. And I want a permanent one in the ground, but I also want a mobile one in my new shop, because my shop it's 18 by 26, but it's got 10-foot ceilings, so there's plenty of height. And I'd love to be able to have it to off, like I could back a trailer in. I've got 10-foot wide doors, and I could back a trailer in, lift off, and then drop stuff down, because I'm going to be working with a lot of marine board or starboard, king starboard, pallets and things like that. So yeah, it's going to be necessary. And I've been keeping an eye out for good deals at Facebook Marketplace for like a little, not a forklift, but one of those kind of like handheld type forklifts that that might do something. Been waiting for Lowe's to be one of their Lowe's to sell one of their used blue little forklifts that the guys and girls use to get to the top shelf. All right, let's. I'm gonna go large. Ronnie, thanks for joining us, man. You'll hang out with the rest of the guys kind of in the back end as I enlarge the screen because I haven't mastered that just yet. I'm working with kind of a dual setup yet. I haven't got a single computer yet. So when I go large, you guys kind of sit in the background, but I can still hear you all and all that good stuff. So, all right. In our Vectric Aspire now tonight, ladies and gentlemen, if you got VCarb Desktop or you got VCarb Pro, don't despair, because some of the information you'll learn tonight will translate over to those programs when you're working with existing models and all. But stay tuned. This is good stuff. It's going to be good stuff. So in the Aspire here, we're going to create a new file. Now, when I'm working with or building models, the number one thing is I'm going to work in either an extremely high resolution or a very high resolution. I very rarely go to the maximum resolution that's available to me, which is when I'm building models that I'm selling or something, I'll use that. But in order to get to those special model resolutions, I'm going to hold the Shift key down as I click on Create a New File. And what that does is in the job setup, it would help if I hold the correct keyboard. Let me grab the actual keyboard that works for that computer. Let's try that one more time. We're going to click on the Shift key when we click on Create a New File. And what that will do is that will give me my extra choices on the modeling resolution here. Now, if we've already created a job, kind of have a setup, and we need to go back into the model or the job setup to increase the model resolution, we can also go in and hold the Shift key down while we're at this stage. We can hold the Shift key down when we click on Set Job Dimensions and Origin, and that will give us those options again. Okay, so either one, when you're first initially creating a new project, hold that Shift key down, or if you've already kind of created the job setup and stuff and you need to go back and increase the resolution, just hold that Shift key down and it'll give you these. So when building models, I like to work in an extremely high resolution. When I'm building models that I'm selling, I'll work in the maximum. But tonight, just for time's sake and buffering and all that stuff and everything, I'm just going to work in a very high resolution for the job and stuff. So let's go over to the Aspire modeling tab here, and let me turn on my mouse pointer so you lovely ladies and gentlemen don't have to try to figure out where my mouse is and all that good jazz. I believe we've talked about this in the past, but green is a good color for y'all to see, hopefully. But in our modeling tab, this is where we will have the modeling tools that we will need to create three-dimensional components. Now, understand something. When you're looking at the 3D view of the results of your components, that result that's getting created or built, the terminology is it's a composite model, right? You're building the composite model. The composite model is the result of the individual components that you create. So, example, if I come in and I have a, let's say I have a circle and a rectangle with square corners here, and I'm in the modeling tab and I create a shape with my shape creating tool. And let's say on the rectangle, I just create a flat shape that's 3/8 of an inch thick. Let's go and split the view here for a minute. This component, which by default is component 1, I didn't give it a special name or anything. And when I create the circle model, let's say that this is going to be a dome, and I will merge that with the rectangle and click apply. Let's go a little bit. Let's go 60 degrees on the angle. Apply. Okay. These two components over on the left in my component tree, these two individual parts, those are components, three-dimensional components, okay? Or just components. You don't really say 3D components, but they're the components. Now, the result of those two components, the model that actually gets created, the terminology is composite model. Okay, that's what you have created, a composite model, a 3D model, technically 2.5D because it's not round, 360 degrees round. We'll talk about all that in just a minute. But the terminology you'll hear, like if you're ever watching a Vectric tutorial, like from Vectric, they will refer to the terms components and composite model. Now you know what they're talking about. The result is the composite model. The parts are the components, okay? So that's that. All right, now, in our modeling tools, our modeling tab here, the first row of tools, that's going to be our main tools and everything. We have Create Shape tool. So with the Create Shape tool, we can create things like domes and dishes. We can create prism type shapes or, triangular, conical type shapes. We can create sweeping conicals or sweeping domes and everything. We can create flat shapes, and we can create profile type shapes, like molding type shapes and everything with our shape creator, with our shape tool, Create Shape tool, right? So that's where we would create kind of our basic shapes and things. Next to the shape tool, we have the two-rail sweep. The two-rail sweep simply means that we are going to be using two lines, arcs, curves, whatever it may be, but there's going to be two paths, two lines, that we are going to have a profile sweep through those lines. So let's say as an example, let me get rid of our components here. Let's delete those out. Let's say as an example, I have an arch here, arc. And let's say that I hold down the control key and drag a copy of it up. And I'm going to go into our clip art. And one of the model categories or model categories in our clip art is molding profiles, right? So I'm just going to use this molding profile here. Now, when it comes to the two-rail sweep, you have your two guide rails. That's our arcs. And in this case, I'm going to select this lower one first and the upper one second. And I'm going to hit the drive rails, use selection. So drive rails, I said guide rails a second ago, but it's drive rails is the terminology. We're driving the profile along those lines. And then we select our profile and we sweep or cross, we can scale that profile. So in case our lines get wider apart or narrower together as they're traveling parallel, they might not be exactly parallel. They could, go all kinds of shapes. We can have that profile remain its same shape, don't scale to it, or we can have it kind of stretch and curve with our drive rails. But we definitely want to sweep it between the spans, right? So when we do that, when we click apply, we end up creating a profile, kind of like this piece of trim here. And it's that profile getting swept between those two lines, right? So it's getting swept between those two arcs. Now, the profile itself has no real height to it here unless I give it height. Right now, the software thinks that it's laying flat. So imagine, if you will, imagine if I went into my profile and let me close this tool for just a second. And imagine if I laid it flat. That's what just got swept between the two lines, right? Well, if I put a leg on the back side here, let's draw a line. And I'm going to snap the line so it's about the same height, 90 degrees down there. And if I join these two vectors as one, that's the wrong tool. Let's go to the join tool. If I join these two vectors as one, now the software knows that this object has height. So when I go into that 2-rail sweep tool, which we're going to be more in depth with these tools, I'm just kind of giving you a quick overview as I introduce them to you. But if I select the drive rails, use selection, and I select the profile, now when I'm sweeping this profile through, it knows that that profile has height, that back height, right? And of course, when I'm setting a profile, I can scale that profile to an exact height if I need to for whatever reason. I try to draw the actual profile to scale, but I can kind of reduce that and it just squishes it down, right, to whatever height that I need. But because it has that back leg on there now it knows that there's some height on that back end, right? Now, notice something. Notice that my profile here, what if I needed the back to kind of be on this side, you know, coming in, not the way it's facing, but the other way, right? Then when we are in our 2-rail sweep here, we have these green nodes, and we can right click on them and we can reverse the rail, but we're gonna or we can swap the rail order. So if we swap the rail order, because I remember I selected the bottom one first, the top one last, right, on those two curves. If I swap the rail order, that means it's going to swap the order that I selected, right? So now it'll be the top to the bottom. And if I apply that and everything, it's going to reverse that that order, right? The direction that it's going and stuff. Okay. So just keep that in mind, that your selection of your drive rails in a 2-rail sweep matters, right? Which one you select first or second. Okay, so that's kind of a quick glimpse at the 2-rail sweep. We're going to come back to these in just a moment. Next to the 2-rail sweep, we have a single line sweep. Now the single line sweep, it's called the extrude and weave. I call it the single line sweep because it's got a single line that we need. But also it's called the extrude and weave because one, we can extrude apart, but this tool allows us to also create over and under weave type effects and everything. So let's say, for example, let's get rid of these drive rails in this component. Let me close this tool so it knows that I want to get rid of this stuff. When it comes to the, and I'm just going to draw a straight line across the screen. And I'm also going to draw one just kind of right there, straight down. And for simplicity and understanding, I'm just going to draw a simple circle. And in node editing, I'm just going to cut that circle in half, which, hindsight being 2020, I could have just drawn an arc, right? But we'll just use that bead, if you will, as our kind of our extrusion. So when we use this third icon the extrude and weave tool, or the single rail sweep is what I call it, what I refer to it as. Think of a center line. So this curve, the center of it is going to follow this path, right? So if I select this drive rail and I select this profile and I apply that, we have simply just created this tube, right? This half of a tube here. Let me turn it at an angle that we can see it a little bit. There we go. Should be able to see it there. So we've created this, we've swept this little arc right across that center line. Now, let's say that I come in and I have both of these rails selected as my drive rails, and I select that profile, and I come in and apply. Now these two crossroads are going to intersect, right? This and that. Okay, we're going to create a nice intersection there. But the cool thing about this extrude and weave tool is we have the ability to weave under and over. So in the event of an intersection, if this is not our desired result to create that intersection, you know, as it is, if we are trying to create a weave effect where lines are going over and under, then we can just check that option and we can create our over-under percentages. So in this case, I'm going to go 100% and 70%. And when I click apply, that's going to create this. And so the over is 100%. The under is 70% of that. So like 30% lower. Okay, so that's what that means. If I did kind of a 50% under apply, then we're going to be 50%, half of this, right, kind of thing. So it creates that over under. On my over percentage, if I change my over percentage, let's say I change that to 75, then what I'm doing is, excuse me, it's not going to let me switch it to 75. The over kind of pretty much kind of controls on that. Let me change this to 100. And this should let me change to 75 now. There we go. One of them's got to be 100. And now it automatically changed on me. It did not like that. So the over really has to kind of, we can't flatten it. What I was going to say is we can, should be able to squish it down, and then we could be 70% of that, but it doesn't like that. It doesn't like doing that, and it's very temperamental. So mostly it's going to be the under that gets changed on that number, and all. So it likes the 100%. But that's because I have one weave right here. I don't have a weave. I have just an over under. Let's draw a second line. Okay. So let's take our line. Let me clear our rails for a second. And let's hold down the control key. Let me close this tool just for a minute. And let's come over here. Now let's select this and go into that extrude and weave tool. We're going to use that as our drive rails. We're going to come in and we're going to do a weave and click apply. And what you should see now is we now have kind of an over under scenario. Now we're at 75%. Let me go 50 here. Let me go halfway so you can really see it, and click apply. Okay. And so we have this over, and my under here is going 50% of, it's halfway down. It's going under at that 50% mark, right? That's kind of where the edges are here. And then as this over comes down, it's coming down to that 50% mark of this one. So if I come in now, when I have two weaves, will it let me switch my over? If I switch my over to 75 and 50 and I click apply, it's going to change right back to 100. It's got to be 100, right? So it's always that way. Now, if I add some base to this, right, now we can change up, and it wants to know how much base meat I want to add, right? So I can go over 100. I'm going to go 110 on that, and I'm going to click apply. And what that is it's going to add this base. I'm still at 50% or 70% here on the over and under, but I've now added some base meat, 10% of base meat. And that base meat changes now. Keep this in mind. That base meat is kind of 10% of my overall here. But as this gets higher, because it's kind of going up, it's getting wider, right? Because this is going over. So that base meat is getting thicker, kind of thing, because it's got to lift it up, right? That kind of thing. So that is the extrude and weave tool. We'll talk more about that in just a minute. We'll talk about creating patterns. But that is our, I like to call it a single rail sweep, but that is our extrude and weave. Now, a very fun tool is the next one, and it's the turn, and spin tool. And this can create a vessel from a profile, like half of a vessel from a profile that kind of sweeps over, or it can create a dish type profile, like a hand of a clock going all the way around, depending on if we choose the turn or the spin. So let's create a profile to see how this would work. So I'm going to start off with a rectangle. And on the rectangle here, I'm going to go into node editing mode, and I'm going to delete my left span. It doesn't matter which left or right. There's not one or the other, but I'm going to delete the left span. So let's go into node editing, delete span. Here, I'm going to insert a point, and I'm going to insert another point. I'm going to pull this in. I'm going to turn this to an arc. And this bottom one here, I'm going to turn into a Bezier curve, because I kind of want to flare this out a little bit. And here I'm going to smooth that. So we have a nice profile here. Okay. Now in that turn and spin tool, I'm going to use the turn feature. Select my vector. I'm going to use the turn feature, and I'm going to click apply. Let's see if I'm zoomed into the right spot here on my screen. Kind of more towards the left. There we go. And when I click apply, it's going to take that profile and just sweep it over. Okay. 180 degrees. Right. Now, if I was working with a two-sided project, I could copy that to the other side to create a full 360-degree vessel for something like the fourth axis or what have you, and that kind of effect, type of thing. But when it comes to this, think of a 2.5D project, which is a 3D model that's flat, like, a sign that's going to hang on the wall or something. You might have that, vessel that kind of, it's half a vessel, and there might be some flowers coming out of it or whatever the case may be. But that's what the turn feature does. It takes our profile and simply just sweeps that profile 180 degrees over. Now, the spin feature, let's close this tool for a moment. And let's delete this and this. I'm going to use a rectangle tool, and I'm going to get right at the center, and I'm going to not draw a rectangle there. I'm going to draw a rectangle here, and I need to make sure that it's not too long that I, can go 360 degrees around, because it's going to pivot on that left side. It's going to pivot the right side around the left side. So in this one, I'm going to go into node editing mode. I'm going to delete that bottom span, and I'm going to bring this end down a little bit. I'm going to insert a point right about here. Let me bring this down. What I want to do is I'm going to use node editing. If I select this node first, that's the node I want to align to. And I select this node last, that's the node I want to align. If I hit the letter Y, it'll straighten those nodes out and even with one another up and down. If I hit X, it goes left to right. I want to hit Y to make a straight line there. And then I want a Bezier curve. And I just want a small little kind of contour here. I'll smooth this one out in just a minute. I want to insert a point right here. I do not want that to be so, I want it to be just a slight gradual. And then I want to bring this across. I want these two to be even. So select this first, this last, and hit Y. And then I'm going to use my fillet tool. I'll put a radius there. In node editing, this icon right here, I'll smooth. And I should end up with kind of a round over and just a smooth transition into this point right here. So just a very simple dish. Now, that turn and spin tool, if I select that profile and I choose the spin option this time, and let's get this on the screen here. If I click apply, it's going to sweep that profile around, and I missed it just on the bottom there as I wasn't quite centered. Let me reset that. Bear with me just a moment. And I also saw another change I needed to make. Let me close this just for a second. I want to align this up and down. Center. There we go. Quick change. I don't want a divot right in the middle of my dish that's getting created. I need this. I need to go into node editing mode. And I need to kind of insert a point. I'm going to have it kind of gradually come back down. Let's turn this. There we go. Slight little downward there. Now this part, I should, let me make sure I'm centered up and down again. I think I did that already. Yeah, I did. Okay. So I should be able to go turn and spin, apply. Oh, and I'm just shy. Give me just a second here. I need to bring my shape in just a little bit. My board isn't quite big enough for a full circle like that. Node editing. I'm just going to bump that in ever so slightly. And then I'm going to move this back to the center of my board. Okay. Now I should be able to, let's turn and spin that bad boy and then we'll move on. Apply, sweep it around. There we go. I'm still a little high. Got a little divot right there in the middle where it raises up. I'd want that to kind of be down. And that's because, you know, I've got that kind of lift there. So I would want that to be transitioned around. But, you know, if I was making like a commemorative plate, let's say as an example, on the rim here, you know, I might have, you know, Spindle TV exclusive, you know, 2024, you know, 2017 to 2024, or whatever the case may be, right? Kind of thing. And then, you know, whatever, you know, gets carved in the center, you know, something like could be the logo or whatever. But, you know, it could be anything, you know. I could do like a little antique, you know, plates that would hang in a kind of a, for those homes that have a country cottage kind of motif, or an antique farmhouse kind of decorative style and stuff. And I could create, you know, kind of little plates that would, you know, have some kind of nice, cool little carvings on them or something, platters and stuff like that. So that's what the turn and sweep tool would do for me if I needed to do something like that. And so now, once we've created shapes and components, we now have a tool called our sculpting tool. And it's for sculpting our models. And this is where it gets a little bit more intense in everything when we're sculpting, because, and we're going to work in the 3D view. So let me just maximize this. Because here, literally, it's like taking clay, a big old blob of clay, and we are sculpting it, right? We are adding, taking away, smoothing things out, stretching things, and things like that. So when we're sculpting an existing component, we are smoothing, smudging, adding, subtracting, undoing. So everything that we do, we can undo. Or we're twiddling our view, and I don't know why, but it is. That's the tool. That's the name of the tool. It's called the twiddle view. So whenever I need to move this view around, I have to be in the twiddle, or I have to hold down my left or my middle roller wheel button on the mouse. I can hold that down, and I can also hold down my left mouse button if I need to pan and all. My middle mouse button kind of slides me side to side, and my right mouse button kind of zooms me in and out, right? So, and all. But let's look at the add. So when we're sculpting, we have our blue brush. Think of it like a brush, right? And so we can change the size of that brush. And when we're adding, depending on the strength or the smoothness, you know, when I'm adding, I'm building material up. Okay, I'm building material up in this. When I'm subtracting, I'm removing material. And depending on, let me turn my intensity up a little bit so you can see that a little bit more intensely. I'm removing material. So I'm kind of, let me twiddle the view so you can see what's going on here. But in this one, I've taken material away. And in this one, I've added material, right? Now, if I need to undo that, the undo tool, I can just take my brush and brush it right over what I just did, and it's like an eraser. Okay, so I can go back and brush over, and it will undo everything that I've done. Right? Brooks Martin said it's a British thing. Twiddle my view. The now when we are smudging, let me add some material here. I'll just add some material here. When we are smudging, we are taking and kind of like, it's almost like taking part of it and dragging it, you know, we're smudging it, you know, kind of, pulling it and everything. So when we're smudging something, we're kind of smudging that, and dragging it and everything, depending on what it is we're doing. Now that's a little extreme what I just did there, but that's because my strength was turned up. If I'm turned down a little bit, then I can kind of, just start, all I'm doing is just lightly kind of patting that clay down, I'm just kind of softening and smudging, and I'm pulling some of the high stuff into the low stuff kind of thing. So if I'm smoothing, then I'm taking and I'm smoothing the edges, right? So I can run my smoothing tool over and I can smooth out all those rough edges that I've created and things. And so these are kind of my tools when I'm sculpting. Now, one of the cool things is in the add tool, when we're adding, we have the ability to change our brush style to a component brush. Now, if I load the default brushes, if I come in here and I load the default brushes, let me get to my brush category, and I'll pull it on the screen so you can see. By default, we have some sculpting brushes that have different types of designs and effects. We have bark, clouds, cracks, right footprint, left footprint, kind of a fine feather. We have a grid type of, dots. We have some gravel, grass, Hessian, oval, and then we have some that I've made, pumpkin. Those aren't defaults, pumpkins and sample mountains and all. Sand, birds or seagulls, tree, slopes, water color, like if you're doing watercoloring kind of effect, like almost like a watercolor painting. And things. And you can also create your own brushes. You can create a little model component and you can save it as a sculpting brush. And what happens when you come in and you choose a sculpting brush, you can change the angle, you can change the side, but here, let's turn this angle kind of more like this. And let's say that I was kind of adding a, let's forget what I just did there. Let's use that undo brush, right? That undo brush. It's intense, right? So you can't let your mouse hang on too long. Let's turn the smoothing down. Let's turn the strength up. And let's kind of come in here and create, and I'm clicking, I'm clicking, and I'm like, that was a kind of a click and hold. My mouse got stuck because of the intensity and everything. And I'm just doing a little bit of overlap, and I'm trying to create kind of a bolt, bark, type of thing. And I can change the size. I can make it smaller and, kind of randomize it a little bit like a tree bark if I was adding bark to this, right? And things. And so we have these different sculpting brushes that we can use, or we can make our own and use them as well to create textures, if you will, on our patterns and stuff. So the sculpting tool is pretty cool. It allows me to, now if I come in and with the smoothing tool, and I come right over all that bark and everything, I can go through and kind of smooth out all the rough edges and stuff and kind of create that rough textured effect. Let's twiddle the view. But now I've kind of smoothed out all those edges, and I've kind of got that kind of rough texture, if you will, right? So that is, kind of just a quick glimpse. We're not going to, spend a whole lot of time on that. But that's the sculpting tool, right? So let's click OK. And let's delete this component. So We're creating shapes. We're two-rail sweeping. We're extruding and weaving, turning and spinning, and sculpting. Then we have something called create a textured area component tool. So that's the next tool. And this is kind of like creating a background wallpaper, right? And when we use this tool, we have in our clip art, let's go over here. In our clip art, we have a category in our clip art for textures, non-tileable, so we can't use them, texture, fill tiles, or texture area tiles, right? And so let's say that I have a brick wall here. And I size it down. Think of the array tool. We talked about array in one of the classes, right? When I'm using the create textured area component, it's kind of like creating an array of our objects. So I've got this brick wall segment, right? Now I'm going to kind of array this across my material to create kind of a background texture in a sense. So the spacing, I'm going to have it go 100%. And on this and on the up, I'm going to have it go 100%. And if I just leave that spacing like that and I click apply, what's going to happen is it's going to create that with a solid space in the middle that is the same size as our component, right? So these voids right here. So we literally took, and the spacing was 100% of our object. So from this one to this one, there's that empty void. It's 100% size, right? Now, if I bring this down, let me hit Control Z. Let's say I bring this down to 0. Bear with me just a second. Clicking too fast, so hang tight 1 second. I was clicking and all that stuff. Let me put that. Okay. Wait for it. I keep freezing it up. Sorry, guys and girls. Give me just a second. We were on a flow there for a minute. I was bound that something was going to lock up on me. All right. So let me grab that brick wall again. I should have just hit reset, the reset button, not try to undo Control Z. But let's say that, let's go back to that tool again. This time we're going to go 0, 0. Okay, so what that means is it's going to fill in my tile area and everything. Wait for it. It would help if I clicked apply. It's going to fill in that tile area and everything where there's no seam, 0, 0, right? So where those, to create that kind of brick wall. And if we look at the 3D view, you see that brick wall there, right? And if let's say that was my background, right? Now I could start building text on top of that. So as an example, let's say I made that my background, and I close that tool and I come over to my text tool. And let's say I called this, let's go Brick City Cafe. All right. And let's change this to go down to Let's go bigger. Move this up. Let's take away all the capitals. Let's go brick. Oh, brick city cafe. There we go. And once again, I'll make it a little taller. Let's go 2.25. Now, the cool thing about when we're modeling and stuff is I can build a shape of the text. So I can go back to that shape, create shape tool. And on the create shape tool, I want my text to be, I want it to have a kind of a little rounded over edges, right? So I want to go kind of domed. I'm going to go 90 degrees, 90. It's going to dome, but I'm going to limit it to a certain height. So what that means is that dome, I'll show you what that means in just a minute, how that works. But the dome, think of a full 90-degree dome. That's just a full, perfect half sphere, right? Half sphere. If I said, okay, as you're creating this half sphere, go up a 1/16 of an inch and then flatten off, right? So as it's creating the sphere, it's going to just go up a 1/16 of an inch and it's going to flatten off. That is limit to height. So if I set this height to a 1/16 of an inch, it's going to create that sphere, but when it gets a 1/16 of an inch high, it's going to flatten off. And what that's going to do is when it flattens off, it's going to create a round over on the edge, right? Flat top, rounded edge. So if we look at the split view here, I'm going to, and I want a base height of, let's go 1/4 of an inch tall, base height. And when I click apply, I'll have straight meat on the letters, 1/4 of an inch. It's picking up the texture. We'll talk about that in just a second. We don't want the bricks on it. But it's picking up that texture. Let me get that texture gone. Bear with me just a second. There we go. So it comes up with that 1/4 of an inch straight meat. And then the shape height after the 1/4 of an inch, now the shape is going to start, right? So the 1/4 of an inch is the base height. That's the straight wood. Now my dome is going to get built on top of that. But my dome, instead of going the full 90 degrees, it's going only up a 1/16 of an inch, and then it's flattening off across the top. So what's happening here, if we look, let's go full scale, is I've got this straight meat here, and then when the shape is starting after that 1/4 of an inch, it's coming up, and then when it gets to that 16, it flattens off across. And that's what gives me that rounded over edge. Okay. And so now I've got this Brick City Cafe with this kind of brick wall in the background texture. And man, we can have all kinds of cool stuff, right? So that create texture area component that kind of sweeps that little brick wall across and creates that. That's how we create different backgrounds and things, right? And stuff. Now, the cool thing about when it comes to text, or not the cool thing, but one of the key things, it's kind of my pro tip for you, ladies and gentlemen, is when we build up, text like this, that straight meat, a lot of times it's really rough on the edges, and it, depending on what type of font you choose, it could be real skinny little letters. There's not a whole lot of meat to them if you're using a real kind of dainty font or something. My key tip is that you should always add a draft to your text, or any part of any object that's kind of got straight walls on it. Just a slight angle. Now, this is going to do two things. Number one, if it is a dainty kind of font, it's going to give it a little bit more meat, right? It's going to give it a little bit more meat. Number two is it actually kind of reduces or increases the reduces the runtime, right? It makes it a little bit faster because instead of on a flat wall, instead of the bit having to slow down and then come up the wall and then come over, it's almost like a 3D tab that we talked about the other week. Having a slight draft on your walls, the bit can kind of just ramp up. It can just kind of ramp up. So it will decelerate some still, but not as much as it would if it was straight. So let's take a look at these letters here, brick wall or brick city, without a draft, right? So we can see that, right? Without a draft. Now let's look at it with a draft. So we're going to come over here and we're going to add, we're going to turn off the black or the background because a draft creates a draft on the visible model. So when you hover your mouse, always read what pops up on the screen. And this says create a component from the visible model with a draft added, meaning any model, any part of the model that's showing, it's going to try to draft that model. So I want the background turned off and I just want the text on because that's all I want is the text visible because that's all I want to draft, right? So I'm going to do a 22-degree draft. Okay. And so that's going to flare out these letters with a 22-degree angle and everything. Okay. Let's go. I'm going to go a little less because this particular font, let's go 15. So it's going to go back to its square walls and then it's going to come out 15. Okay. All right. So now we have a slight draft added there on our components and it just will give it a nice look, especially when we smooth everything over. But now we can come back and it created a component, a new model with a draft added, right? So it created a brand new model with the draft added. So my text, my original text, I can turn that off. I'm not going to delete it. You could, but I want, in case I need to go back and change something, maybe I want to make an 11-degree draft or something like that. I'm going to keep my original. I'm just going to turn it off. So I've got that draft there. And if I turn the brick wall back on, so we have our brick wall and our Brick City Cafe, right? So it just gives it just a little bit of an angle and everything, a little bit wider meat and all that stuff. So something like that. So that texture area component coming back here, let me delete that. We'll come back to that in just a minute. Let's grab another type of component here. Remember last week I was playing with the array tool and I was playing with diamond bits or, diamond plating and stuff. Well, this is kind of the 3D version of that, right? And everything. And, versus the vector. And so if I was creating in that tool, if I was creating that texture area component, it's going to fill this, the whole background. It's going to fill my whole background with this diamond plate. But I may need to shift things over, right? Shift things over, twist them and turn them around. So just like the array tool that we talked about the other week, this create texture area tool has the spacing on the X and Y. It has the shifting on the X and Y, that shifting. And then it has the reflection. So if things need to be turned a different way, right? So if I went here, let's say that I went 33.3% on the X and the Y. Could be just the X. And let's say that I shifted the X over 50%, half of my model and all. I'm not going to do, I'll do 50% on this one too. I don't know the exact settings for a diamond plate, so we're not going to fiddle around with it. But if I click apply, and everything here. Right now, what we're going to have is all the diamonds are going to be kind of facing the same way because I haven't done any orientation, right? So now the reflection, every other one, let's say that every other one is going to be facing 9 degrees. And I think the other one, let's do that as well. Wait for it to turn. There we go. And and it's going to fill up the pattern with the, and I'm off on my percentages and stuff like that. I'm slightly off on the shift because this, just so you know, this diamond should be in line with this one and so on and so forth. But you get the idea. And it'll stretch out across. So the cool thing about it is now you have all these clip art with all these different types of patterns that you can go in and create all kinds of cool background effects, you know, for your signs. I mean, all kinds of cool backgrounds. And I mean, you know, they have like pillow cushion button type effects. Let me get rid of that. The pillow type button effect. Let's go there. Go to our modeling tool here. This one's going to be 0, 0, 0, 0, and just click apply. So it should, yeah, it reset everything. That's good. And so now we have, let's go look at it in the 3D view, right? So we have that kind of cool background. And then again, we could, you know, pull text off of it, we do whatever the case may be. And of course, now keep this in mind, your model height, the Z height, right? You can make it however tall you want. You know, you don't have to settle for what's there in the component tree. You can open up the spanner wrench, which is the properties of your model. You can open the spanner wrench, and by default, you have your shape height, but you can give yourself, like if you need more shape height or whatever, you know, you can increase your height and stuff, right? Whatever it is that whatever you're trying to do and everything. Right? So you can create all kinds of cool effects and stuff. Now, this is not like a parametric wall or, did I say that right? Parametric, one of the two. But we'll talk about that in the future and all that stuff. But this is a pretty cool tool because it gives you the ability to create all kinds of background effects. Now, let's jump down here for just a second. Let's get rid of this tool for a moment. And let's get rid of this background. Let's jump right down to the second row for a moment because there's two other tools down here. I'm going to skip the zero plane. We'll talk about that in just a minute. But there's a tool called Create a Component from an Imported Bitmap. So you can turn a picture into a 3D model, right? And then we have export the visible component out of the software as an STL. Like if you made a model to send to someone or to sell or whatever, you would export it out as an STL. Let's talk about this tool, create a component from a selected bitmap. And this tool that we just talked about, create a background texture, right? Kind of a combination of the two. Let's go online to Google for a minute. And in Google, I'm going to type in, my search term is going to be a pile of leaves.
According to Google Books,
Alexa,
dig through the leaf
Alexa,
pile in this
stop.
collage-inspired
Oh,
book
wait, hold on,
and
sorry.
Pages readers explore
Google,
the concept
stop.
of
It wasn't Alexa. Sorry, Alexa. Didn't mean to blame you. Bear with me a second. Pile Why is my mouse not working or my computer not working? Give me just a second. There we go. Pile of leaves, right? Summer leaves, whatever the case may be. Now, in images, I'm going to go to tools and I'm going to go to size and I want large. I want a large resolution of images. Okay. Let's maximize this up. Now I'm going to find a picture or an image similar to this one that kind of almost like, fills the whole screen, right? Like this one right here. And I'm going to save that image to the computer. Okay. Save. Now, I'm going to come in here and I'm going to select on this tool to create a component from an imported bitmap. And I'm going to choose from my downloads, I'm going to choose that pile of leaves. Now that's going to create a model. And if we look at the 3D view, that's going to create a model of these leaves right here. Now I'm going to take that model and I'm going to smooth it out just a little bit. I want to keep some of the texture, but not that much. So I'm going to apply some smoothing to that model. And I'm going to just turn it up just a little bit. I'm not going to go too crazy and everything. And all I'm doing when you're smoothing is just kind of softening it up a little bit so it's not so textury and stuff. So let's turn it up just a little bit more. Okay. And right about there and click OK. Okay. Let's kind of zoom in. I know it's blurry on the screen right here. And everything because I'm not in a very high resolution, right? I should be when I'm making components like this. But let's go on that pile of leaves. Let's do that again. So you might be able to see it a little bit better if we zoom in right there in that corner. And I'm going to turn it up just a little bit more. I'll go halfway and click apply or okay. Oh, too much. See, I lost all the detail, right? So let me back that off. Okay, right there. All right, close. Now I'm going to take that leaf image and I'm going to go in on that leaf image. I'm going to go into that create textured area tile and I'm going to apply it. Right. So I'm going to fill up the whole background and everything with this kind of leafed texture. Right. So to create, I mean, this could have been a bedrock of gravel. I could have Google searched, gravel bedrock, blades of grass, whatever this, all these different types of images and things. And I can use that image. I can import that image and make a model out of it right upon import. Do a little touch up. I had to smooth it out a little bit, but then I can use that to create area texture, and I can fill my entire background from that. And then I could build my text up on it just like I did with the brick wall, that kind of thing. But now I've kind of customized my own background, right? So that's pretty cool. Now, the other cool feature of the create picture from an image, let's look at online a website called Photor.com. Now, what you see on the computer right now is a Shelby GT 500 Mustang 67. There's a few different images of that. And then below that, you'll see some Easter Bunny grayscale. We're talking about doing Easter. We're doing an Easter project next week and everything. So here I can use Photor. I have a subscription with them, and I can make up to each month 500 images. I can AI generate 500 images and stuff. So I can do that from an image or from text. So in this case, in the text, I typed in 2.5 dimension negative grayscale relief. Sorry, I got the hiccups. Of a 1967 Ford Mustang GT500 Shelby on an asphalt road, right? And these are the images that were generated and everything. Now, I can download those images and I can come in to Aspire and I can import that image.
Mute yourself.
I can go into the size because it's huge, right? It's big. And I can size it down to fit on my board. Align to the center of the material. And then I can apply some smoothing because the texture is like rough, you know, coming in. But I can apply a smoothing to this. Give it just a second. And then, you know, I can create a three-dimensional model of this Mustang. Now, here's the kicker. Okay, this is there's goods and bads with creating a model in Vectric from a picture, right? The black dark areas of the photo are negatives. The white are the positive, that's the high parts. And all the gray scale in between is what creates those heights and everything. So in the image that was used, you know, all the whites and everything, they're brought out. All the darker areas are pushed in. You know, that's just the way a 3D model works and everything. So if I'm looking at this model straight on, this component straight on, it looks pretty sharp, right? But if I'm walking up, and this image is hanging on a wall, and I'm walking up at an angle from the side, the image looks very weird, right? Looks weird and everything, because all the highs, all the lights and highlights and everything are brought out. All the darker part of the images are pushed in. And, you know, so when you're looking at when you're walking up to the side, you're like, what in the world is that? But as you walk around and see it from the front, it looks like it's supposed to look, right? And that's when you generate a model from an imported bitmap, this is the effect you're going to get, right? We typically, when we're building models, we're typically trying to build and extrude on top and everything. And so, but all the shapes have some kind of shape and contour, and we're adding to those and all. When we use an image, Vectric says, okay, this is dark, this is light, right? Now, the model straight on looks exactly like it's supposed to look like. I mean, if you carved it, it would look just like it. You see it right here, you know, if you're looking at a wall. But again, it's funky from, you know, like a side view or something. It doesn't, you know, and a real model, a real component. Let me show you a real component. Let's go to animals.
Does it make a difference if you invert the photo, Lanny?
all it does is it just brings the highs out and the lows in, but it still looks funky from the side. But that's a great question, and I'll show you what that looks like. We'll do the rabbits here. So if we were looking at a model, a 3D model here, like let's say of this gorilla, right? We would expect to see something like this, you know, shapes that are built out, sculpted outward, and then the eyes still have shape to them, right? The eyes still have roundness to them and everything, and they're just kind of, you know, they're smaller than the main surface, and the nostrils and stuff, they're sculpted and but they're still built up. And that's how we build models when we're sculpting and things and stuff. When the software generates a model from an image, it's kind of funky looking. I mean, it carves fine, you know, but it's not ideal. It's honestly not. Now, let's take a look at one of my Easter Bunny projects. So if I come into here and I imp or create a component from a selected bitmap, and I select the, let's go with this Easter Bunny right here. Let's go to the size tool. Make that 16. The center tool. Okay. So this is our grayscale, right? This is our grayscale. And so the bunny's white, right? So the bunny's going to be popped out. The eggs are white. The grass is, shades of gray going back to the dark. And then the flowers have a little bit of whiteness to them, right? So in the 3D view, let's turn it looking like this and everything. This one comes out fairly decent and everything. If I turn this to the side, hold on, don't drag your model off your board. Let me put it back. Go back there. If I turn this to the side, you can see the rabbit is extruded out. The eggs are extruded out. They're created that shape and everything. The flowers are extruded out, even the little grass blades and stuff. And we would apply some smoothing to get them a little bit smoother so they're not so wispy, if you will. But the eyes have it, right? So let's come here and look at the eyes for a minute. And let's look at the 2D view for a second. So on the eyes, we have this black, right? Black is in, white is out. Right? When the software creates from an image, black is the steepest, darkest part of the model. Grayscale all the way to white is the highest part of the model, right? So black, we're going to have a hole here. White, we're going to have that little bit of white poked up. Over here on the right side, black, and then this little bit of white coming on the outside. Now let's look at it in the 3D view. So we come in here and look at it in the 3D view. Stand by 1 second. Let me get off of the, I've got the part. Let me close this tool and let me unclick off that so you can see better. But here in the eye, let me turn this sideways so you can see. Now, I'm going to apply a smoothing real quick, just so you can see it smoothed out because it's kind of pixelated right now, so you really can't see what's going on. But I'm going to apply some smoothing to smooth things out. Okay. And I'm going to also take just a second. This one time, I'm going to generate a higher resolution just for a minute. I'm going to go into my, hold down the shift key, go in here, and I'm going to turn the resolution up to 20, that extremely high. Give it a second. It's going to update this model with that higher resolution, more pixels and stuff like that, so that we can see things much clearer and not so pixelated, right? But now we can see that we have a cavity here, and then we have this kind of raised up little mountain and everything, right? Because the black is sunk down, the white is raised up and everything. But when we look at it, and again, let's get it centered on the board here. So some images will do well. Some images will, leave a little bit to be desired, right? And stuff. But using a program like Photor to do AI generation, could be a viable option, right? So here's an example. We'll do a quick example of generating a photo based on text, right? So I'm going to get rid of the word negative. I'm just going to do a 2.5 dimension grayscale relief of and I'm going to do old farm truck in front of a barn out in the field. In front of the barn out in the field, and I'm going to generate this grayscale, right? So we can just give any kind of description of something that we want. It's pretty fast. It'll take just a second to generate, and it's, for me, I've got it set to generate 2 images at a time, so it gives me kind of a choice and everything. And so of the 2, I kind of like them both, but I'll use this one. I'll download that. Now we're going to go to Vectric Aspire. We're going to turn off the bunny rabbit. We're going to import or create a component from a selected bitmap. So we'll select that farm truck in front of the barn. We will size it. Go to the size tool, select it, There we go. Size it down to 16. Apply. Center it onto the material. Rinse and repeat. A lot of this stuff is. And smooth it. Smooth it. So we'll come in and apply a moderate amount of smoothing to just get rid of the wispiness of the grass and everything, and kind of knock that down a little bit. There we go. We'll click OK. And just that fast, we've created a 3D model component that we could carve. Now, the model, if we go to the properties of it, has a height, a default height, right? And in this case, it's about 1/4 inch. I'm going to give it just a little bit more height, a little bit more height. Let's go 0.375. Oops, too many decimal points. 375. And we're going to just kind of give it a little bit of, height. And so now we have a 3D component. But again, if you look at it from the front, it's amazing looking and all that stuff, all the windows in the back and all. But if you look at it from the side, it's weird, right? It's not how we would typically build a model. but it's how Vectric Aspire builds the model. But now Charlie asked, hey, what happens if we invert the image? So when we invert the image, that means everything that's out goes in and everything that's in goes out, right? So on this image, I'll keep it turned at this angle here. We will go to the properties, and we will simply, instead of an add, we will make it a subtract, opposite, right? Add, subtract. So everything that was once out will go in, and everything that was once in will go out. Okay, let me click off there so we can see. So now let's look at it from the front view and everything. We still have the, you know, when we're looking at it front on, we still have that view. But when we look at it from the side, the tires are now in because they're black, right? The tires are now in and everything else is out, right? So it's got a weird look to it when you're kind of like coming and approaching at it from an angle, you know, front on. But it is an option for creating three-dimensional models, right? So photos, okay? All right, now let's talk about these tools, and let's talk about this and really kind of make sense of it all. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to select all of these components that I've made, and I'm going to delete them all. I'm going to clear out the component tree. So let's select this one, hold down the shift key, select the last one, and hit delete. And also I'm going to go back and turn my resolution down so I don't start the B word, buffering, right? You know, don't want that. So we're just going to go back to very high, but create your models in that higher resolution. Okay, let's make sense of this really quickly here. In our component tree, you'll see the heading of level. Okay, we can create multiple levels. All right, and I want you to, for the moment, I want you to think of a level for the moment as a layer. It's not, but let's think of it that way. So we can have components all on one layer, or in this case, level. Let me use the proper word, level. Or we can have components, our individual components, on different levels. Now, just because they're on different levels doesn't mean one is higher than the other or anything like that. It's not like levels like, you know, from the bottom to the top kind of thing. It is basically levels gives us a way to combine models without changing their structure. So let's talk about how models, when they get created, let's talk about the 4 types of combine modes. So when you're creating a shape and everything, the 4 main type of combine modes is add, subtract, merge, and merge low. Okay, that's the 4 main types. There's one more we'll talk about in just a minute. It's called multiply. But that's when you're creating shapes and all, that's your 4 main component types: add, subtract, multiply, divide. Now, if I was adding one component to another, it's like taking a sheet, like a bed sheet, going out to your garage and draping it over your car. That sheet, being a flat sheet, once it hits the model below it, the component below it, which is the car, the sheet, the upper component, takes the shape of the car as it drapes over, right? So if I have a rectangle and I have a circle, and I create on that rectangle, I create a flat shape. Let me split the view here and turn it on its side here. if I have a flat shape here, if I create the circle component also as a flat shape, just as an example, and I make the combine mode and add, I'm adding one component to the other, then I'm draping that second component that I created, I'm draping it over the first component. So here you can see I've kind of got like a stair step. So my circle component is flat here, but where it meets the rectangle, it's taken on the shape of that rectangle. So it's kind of draping over it, if you will. It's kind of creating that shape. Now, if I subtract, if I create this circle component as a flat component and I subtract, now it's going to take that circular shape from the component that's under it, the first component I made. So it's subtracting that shape from it. So it's kind of bringing it down. And so now that circular shape has been removed, if you will. If I merge the two together, then they both remain rigid. They keep their shape and they simply blend together. Okay. So we're not adding and draping one over another. We're not taking the, one away from another. We're merging them together, and they keep their shape, high, low, big, small, whatever, but they blend together. So that's merge. And then merge low, if one component was taller than the other, then it would keep the lowest component on the combined area. So right now, both of my components are the same height, right? So let me change the height of the circle. I'll change the height to 3/8. Too many decimal points. I'm going to merge low, okay? And so what happens is it keeps that lowest point. So in this case, my circle is still whole, okay? But where it intersects with the rectangle, since I've got the circle set to merge low, where that intersection occurs, it's keeping the lowest of the two. In this case, the rectangle was only 1/4. The circle was 3/4. So it's keeping the rectangle, right? So it creates that shape there. So that's your combine modes, right? How things combine. And when it comes to the componentry, and Roger S., I'll answer your question, and Lee, all your questions, I'm going to take a breather here for just a second. I'm going to bring everybody up for just a moment, and I'm going to answer your questions. But so that's our 4 main combine modes: add, subtract, merge, and merge low. Merge low keeps the lowest of the 2 or 3 or whatever's combined, right? Keeps the lowest of the 2. Now, let's say, for instance, I want to throw a third object into the mix, okay? So I'm going to close this tool, and I'm going to come in here, and I'm going to, let's go with an ellipse here. And on that ellipse, I'm going to go into the Create Shape tool. We'll give it a bit of a curved profile, and we're only going to go maybe like 45 degrees of the curve. On the base height, I'll just go 0 on the base height. And I'm going to set this to add. Okay. Did I just like literally close that tool? Let's try that one more time. No limit. We'll go no limit and apply. I must have hit close instead of apply. Okay. So now we have this going on, right? So the ellipse I just created is set to add, right? So it is adding, draping over the objects it comes in contact with. The circle is set to merge low. The rectangle is just set to add as well. And so the circle, again, is keeping the lowest points of the three. It's keeping that lowest shape, but now it's draping over and all. And I don't want any of this, right? I don't want this. I need my rectangle and my circle to keep that shape where it's kind of got that recess down. But I need both of them to drape over the ellipse as an example, right? So I can, if they're all on the same level, I can't really manipulate it that way. I can't get it to do that because no matter what, when I change the combine mode, add, subtract, merge, merge low of a component, if I'm on the same level, then it's going to just change that combine mode for all, how it combines with all the components in the same level. So that's why if I take our circle and our rectangle and I move it into another level, now I can come in and I can change how one level interacts with another level. So here I can come in and let me turn off the or on the combine mode here. I actually want this and this to be up here, and I want the dish or the dome to be down here. Okay. And I'm going to, so you can see it a little bit more dramatically, I'm going to take and move these over the dome a little bit right here. I want them to kind of drape over on all sides, right? So my level here, these two components are still merging low with one another, right? If I turned off the level 2, which is that dish, right? If I turn it off, they're still merging low with one another, which is what I want. But they are adding to the level below it, meaning they're draping over that level below it. Now let's make it to where there's no merge low. Let's change this to just merge. Combine mode merge. Combine mode merge. Now my rectangle and my circle are combined together. And let me change my circle size to 1/4 of an inch, 0.25. I'll change the height back to 1/4 so they're even. So now if I turn off that level 2, my two components here, they're merging with each other. They're merging with each other, but they're adding, because that level is set to add, they're adding to the level below it, right? So they're draping over the level below it, right? So our levels allow us to put one or more components in a level and have them interact with each other however they want. And then that group, if you will, you can kind of almost think of it like a group, that level is interacting with the components of another level based on the setting, the combine mode of the level. So level 3 is set to add. It's adding to level 2. And if I change the combine mode to subtract, now my little circle rectangle will subtract from that ellipse, so it'll take it away that shape. If I set that combine mode to merge, then my rectangle circle will just merge with the ellipse, right through the middle. They'll keep all their same thing. And if I set it to merge, if I set that combine mode to merge low, then they will keep the lowest part of the components, which in this case is my rectangle circle, right? Only where the intersect occurs, right? So levels is kind of like layers where we can separate our different components, but they have the added feature of being able to interact with one another, one level and another. We can change how they interact, add, subtract, multiply, merge high, merge low. Levels also have other tools and functions. Levels, not just the combine mode that we've been talking about this whole time, but I can, in this menu, if I right click on it, I can show only the things that are on that level and turn off everything else. I can hide everything that's on that level. I can have it select like if I had 100 components on one level, instead of going and checking each one and holding the shift key and clicking on each one, I could just tell it to select all the components, right? All at once. I could add clipping we haven't talked about yet and all that, but I could draw a vector and anything outside of that vector would get removed. Anything inside the vector would get kept, kind of thing. I could add mirroring to where it takes and mirrors the shapes around. We haven't done any of that yet. And then I can, delete a level, give it a new name or whatever the case may be, right? So levels are pretty powerful, and they're the key. Levels are the key to how your model really comes together. Now let's take a break for a minute, and let's answer some questions that have been building up. Okay, so the first question, let me bring the guys back up and everything. How you guys doing? Hanging out back there in the back, for the moment.
Okay.
Lots of information so far, right?
Absolutely.
All right. So hopefully it's good information. Hopefully that it will all come together. All right. So here's our first question, ladies and gentlemen, is do you use a stylus and pad or mouse only? Would a stylus give more precision using these types of tools? So I have a stylus and pad. Let me grab it real quick and I'll show you. It's right here beside me. So I have a stylus and a pad here. And this is a Huion tablet and everything. And I do not use this for some reason. I don't use this when I'm working in Vectric, creating models and all, but I use it a lot when I'm working in ZBrush and stuff and everything. And ZBrush is another sculpting program for making 3D models and all. But I do have a tablet. It does make it easy and everything, but I've never used the tablet. I've never used the tablet and everything with my Vectric Aspire. I've always just used the mouse and everything because I'm not really doing any intense sculpting and stuff. I'm building shapes. I'm merging those shapes. I'm tilting and weaving, or we haven't talked about the tilting and fading yet and all stuff, but I'm not really sculpting, like sculpting clay. Now in ZBrush, I'm sculpting, right? So I really need that precision and all. But a stylus and tablet are not a bad thing. All right, so Kool-Aid asks, if I missed it, I lost internet, how do you create a brush, right? Remember we talked about creating those sculpting brushes and everything. So Kool-Aid's question is, how do you create a brush? Well, let me go through and here. And let's say that I'll just use the clip art for the moment. Now let's go to plants and fruit. And let's say that I made this component, right? I didn't make the component, but let's say that my grass weave and everything here, this cattails and stuff. Let me bring my head down out of the way for just a minute. And I don't need to get big for this. Let me just get my head out of the way. When I'm creating a brush, I just make the model, whatever the component is, right? Make it. It could be little, shoot, what's the word I'm looking for? It could be little grass blades. It could be anything, right? You know, make a shape, make a component. And then up at the model menu at the top, with that component selected, okay, so with that component selected, the model menu and everything, you can bear with me. Let me just a second. Where is sculpt, smooth, reset? Sorry, let me go into the sculpting tool. Haven't made a brush in a while, Kool-Aid. Hold on a second. Okay, let me cancel that. Stand by a second. Emboss component, scale ZI, distort, replace below, select component, create a component from, create a component. Oh, create a, all right, let me right click on here. Oh, shit. All right. On the component, Kool-Aid, right click on the component in here and choose save as sculpting brush. So when you save as a sculpting brush, I knew it was one of the menus, I just couldn't find it. You want to, the sculpting brush is going to be located, all the sculpting brushes are going to be located in the C drive, users, public documents, Vectric files, sculpting brushes, right? And then you can, you know, save that in that folder. And then it'll be there when you're sculpting. You can then come in and add, use a component brush, load brush, and it'll open up that, and you can choose that, in this case, the cattails. And then, you know, it will allow you to come in, and let me turn the power up. Let's go into here. Doom. Oh, hold on a minute. Give me just a second. I've got it set to merge low. I'm building the components in that. I got to get into a different level. Okay, level 1. Wait for it. Well, hold on a minute now. There we go. It needed something on the screen. Close that, sculpt that. It's coming. It's coming. There we go. Thank God. All right. Add. Use a sculpting brush. Load the brush. The cattail. Click add. I'm afraid that when I created the cattail, I created it as a, there's no background in here. So it's only going to create the cattails on top of the cattail, right? So let me put a background in here. So bear with me just a second while I build. There's nothing there. So I got to give it a background to add the cattails to. So let me start off with a rectangle. Let me zoom out and let me give this a it will not create vectors and all while you have a tool open. All right, so I got to give it a background. So we're going to go to the modeling tools, create shape. I'll just give it an 1/8 inch flat background, 0.125. Click apply. All right, so now I have a background. Now I can come in, sculpt. Wait for it. Add component, load the component. And now I can create and add, you know, those cattails, whatever they need to be, but I can add them in. So that's how you create a brush. So you create the model, and then in the level, wherever you created that component, right click on it and choose the option to save it as a sculpting brush. Okay, that's it. Sorry it took so long to get to that answer. Okay, so now the next question was from Roger. Roger says, can you change the base height on the background? Absolutely. So Roger, you might have asked this question when I had like the leaf background or something like that. But let's say, for instance, just as an example, let's say that we just have this cattail here. Okay. Now this cattail, the model itself and everything, if we look at the properties, there's no base height to this. It's just it's all shape height, right? So from the top to the bottom. And I can change the base height. Let's say I give it a 1/4 inch, too many decimal points. I can change the base height here. of that, just that individual component, right? I can give it 1/4 of an inch. But I can also, if I needed to create a thicker background, right? Let's go back to 0 here. I can come in and create that background component. So in this case, I'll go with just 1/8 of an inch. And so now I have this kind of 1/8 inch background, if you will. And if I want to increase the background base height, that component 3, which is the whole background, I can go into the properties, which is the spanner wrench. And I can, let's say I give it another 1/8 of an inch and click close. Or up, not close, but apply. So now I'm at 1/4, right? So I can change the the base height on the background. I can give it more meat, like I can give it a background like thicker. If it was one of those textured, like the leaves where it covered the whole thing, I can give that base height, right? I can increase the base height of that. The leaves would be the shape height. So there's a base height, which is the straight meat, and then the shape height, which in this case, the rectangle is a component. It's all base, right? There's no real shape. There's no curves or contours. It's flat and all. So it's all base height. But the cattails, that's a shape height. And if I give the cattails base height, then I'm stacking that meat underneath it, that wooden meat underneath it, giving it base height, right? That straight meat underneath. And the shape height sits on top of the base and everything. So, all right. Hey, Doug Fushi, glad you could make it and all. So that's where we're at. So what do you think, guys? The interesting stuff so far?
Very.
All right, good. I'm gonna, as you all, if y'all have any questions, go ahead and type them in. I'm going to talk about, before we're going to wrap up here in just a minute. This is kind of like I said at the beginning. So, but I need to put it all together so it makes sense for you. What I want to do is I want us to create a vector, turn it into a shape, almost like a component or a model, and then you'll see how they combine and stuff and tilt and fade and everything. So for this example, I'm going to let's do vector. We'll just go with a basic one. Right click and save images. All right. But, do y'all have any? You guys that are joining me and everything, I just want to bring on screen so everybody can see your lovely faces and all. But do y'all have any questions or anything so far? Any interaction? Any input? Something I might have missed or not talked about yet? Or
No.
Hey, Laney, just a quick question. Do you have like a preference or a site you go to? You showed photo, but do you have some other sites that you recommend for getting images?
as far as like generating images or just like when I went and grabbed those leaves and things.
Well, like let's say like with some of the DX files I've seen you use in the past.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So there's 3axis.co I like. That's kind of some free vectors and stuff, but I'll Google search and see what's out there. I have a subscription with Photor. I have a subscription with ease, vector ease. Let me want to do them justice. Let's see here. Vector ease. I spell it. Vector easy. This from time to time is a good place to find images and graphics and vectors and stuff. And they have free ones, but they also have the pro ones, you know, if you have a subscription and all. But it's a great place to get images for tracing. And you can do free downloads, or if you can get the license by being having a plan and everything, by logging in, having a plan and stuff. But that's another good place to get good vectors. That's really kind of it. Photor, I generate AI photos from there. Now, when it comes to models, CG Trader, I've got an account with CG Trader. I love the models that they make there. And that's all I use from, besides design and make, of course. CG Trader is my next go-to. And Etsy, of course, Etsy's great, but that's kind of it. But Vector Easy is a great place to get, different graphics and stuff.
Thanks.
Vect Easy. Vector Easy. Oh, shoot. Let me go back to that. Vect Easy. VECTEEZY. Vect Easy. Vectors. VectEasy.com. But that's a great place and stuff. And all. All right, so let's go back. Let's go back to full screen here, and let's kind of wrap this up with let's put everything together, right? Let's put everything together, how things work. So we're going to delete. I'm going to get back just to a single delete single level. Delete that level, delete that level. Okay. So we always start off when we always have one level by default, just like we have one layer by default. In here, I'm going to import the image of Mickey Mouse. Okay, I'm going to go into the trace bitmap tool, and I'm going to turn the bitmap fading off. I'm going to bring this up to 75. Default corner fit, noise filter, I'll turn up to 3. Preview, apply, and close. And then I will come in and turn off that bitmap layer. So this is going to be our vector. And we're going to build from this. But there are two things that I would like to do. First thing I want to do is I want to ungroup this, and I want to create an offset inward and quarter inch. Let me go 3/8, 0.375. Too many decimal points. All right. Close that. I'm going to delete that trash that got created. Here, I'm going to fix this. I'm going to go into node editing and just delete this point. And then on these nodes here, I'm going to go into the curve fit tool, circular arcs, and just replace that. I'll keep this little curve here, it'll make it a little bit organic. I just want to get rid of all those node points. Okay, so now I got some inner areas I want to create cavities. So just like building a house, ladies and gentlemen, we start from the foundation up, okay? So the outer perimeter is going to be our foundation. And on the outer perimeter, we're going to go into the Create Shape tool. We're going to use the Create Shape tool for this whole thing and everything. So for this, I would like to have Mickey's face, the base, to have a little bit of a contour to it. So it's going to be the shape itself. It's going to have a curved profile. The whole shape is going to have a slight curve to it. And I'm going to go with a 60-degree curve. I'm sorry, 30-degree curve, not 60. And I do want to have a little bit of base meat in the background. Now, remember, when we're going to be building, we're going to be stacking these levels, creating these levels of components on one another. So that adds to the thickness of our material. Remember, if I'm working with a piece of 3/4 inch material, everything's got to kind of stay within that, right? So I'm just going to give it an 1/8 of an inch base height. So let's split the view here. So, and let's zoom in, and that way we can keep track of what's going on. When I click apply, I'll call this the base. I'm going to give it names. Base, curved profile 30 degrees, base height 1/8 of an inch, no limit, meaning I'm not flattening it out or anything. Add combine mode for the base, and I'm going to click apply. Okay, let that create that shape. There. Okay, now I'm actually going to tone this down a little bit. Let's go instead of no, I'm going to keep it at 30. I'm going to keep it just like that. So we always click on, when we create a component, we always click on Start New Component. It locks in the one that we just made, and it allows us to select another vector to make our next component. So the next component for this is going to be the inner vector on the face here, this inner vector. And this one, again, is going to have a curved profile, but I'm only going to go like a 10 degree. I'm going to give it a 1/16 of an inch, 0.0625. No limit. Again, I'm adding it right on top because I want it to drape over and take the shape of what's underneath it. So this will be the kind of inner outline, we'll call it, and click apply. Okay, so that's going to, now when we look at this, it's going to give it some dimension, right? You know, those two layers. And that upper layer is draping. It's adding to the one below it, the component. So that add mode, it's like a sheet, like I said, draping over your car, right? It's following that curve. Okay. Now we start a new component. Now the next component is going to be the mouth here, right? And this is going to be a subtract. I'm taking that material away from the components that are below it, right? From the ones that are created previous. Let's say, instead of saying below, that were previous of it, right? So this one is going to be a flat shape, no curved profile, just a flat shape. I'm going to subtract it. 1/16 of an inch is fine, and it's going to be a subtract, and it's going to be the mouth, M-O-U-T-H. Click apply. That's going to take away that shape, right? So if we come in here, it's taken away that shape of the mouth. Right? Now we're going to start a new component, and in this is the tongue, right? He's smiling, you know, kind of deal, right? And you can see his tongue, right? So we're going to add that back. So we're systematically choosing foundation, next level, that kind of thing. So now here on the little tongue vector, That's going to be an add, and I'm just going to keep it at the 1/16 of an inch. I'm going to give it a little bit of a curved profile, and add. Okay. So it's going to be that. Now we're going to smooth out all these edges at the end. All the smoothing and stuff will be done at the end, but that's going to be that shape. Start a new component. We're starting a new component. We want to lock that one in. The nose. Now the nose, right? The nose, I want a full dome. Full dome. All right. So this one is going to be a curved profile, but I'm going the full 90 degrees. 90 degrees. No base height. I need it to no base height. I don't want any straight meat at the base of the nose. I just want the shape to go full dome from one end to the other. So no base height, no limit, and I'm adding it, right? Adding it. So this is going to be the nose. Nose. All right, we're going to click apply. Okay, that's going to give it that full dome. All right. Now, if I want to reduce the size of the nose or anything, I can scale to an exact height. So if I choose that option to scale to an exact height, I could scale it down, right? I can scale it down. So in this case, I'll scale it to 1/8 of an inch. 0.125. So I get that round, nice dome, but it's only 1/8 of an inch tall. All right, so click apply and get that. So here, okay. Keep it in perspective. Now, start a new component. The eyes outline, the outline for the eyes and everything. Now, you can kind of go one of two ways. You can bulge them out or bring them in, right? However you want to do and everything. Just think of the area here, you know, kind of we'll look at it both ways and see which one you like. So the first one, I'm going to go a 1/16 of an inch, 0.0625. Oops, sorry, that was in the wrong spot. No limit, 0.0625 up here. I'm going to go curved profile. I'm going to go 30, 60. Let's go 40 degrees. And I'm going to subtract. I'll subtract this one. No, sorry, ladies and gentlemen, no base height. Get rid of that 1/16 of an inch. The 40 degrees, since I'm subtracting, it'll concave that eye socket area right there and everything. So when I click apply, it'll concave that area. All right. Now we'll look at it both ways. We'll reverse it in just a minute, but let's start a new component. Let's select the eye vectors here. And we will curve profile, same 40 degrees, but this time we're going to add that back. Okay. So that could be option one, right? Option one could be that. Let's go the other way. Let's take this one. Let's go subtract, and then we'll turn the other one into an add. So subtract on that. Let's click apply. Let's go into, let's close out of this tool for a minute. Go back to the previous component there. Go into the spanner wrench, which is the properties, and change it from a subtract to an add. Right? So we can kind of figure out, you know, which one's going to look better. I think of the two, the other way is going to look better. It's an odd proportion, you know, on the eyes and everything. Let's go back to that component. And let's subtract it back. Okay. And on the other component, let's add that back. Okay. And I want to make the, on this, I want to change the height here on this component. I want to go 0.1. I want to push them out more. Okay. And I want to give them a small amount of base height, 1/16 of an inch. I want a little bit of straight meat under there. Okay. Let's go a 32nd. 1/16 is a little bit too much. 0.3125. There we go. All right. Now all this will, when we smooth everything out, then it will it'll all kind of come together. Right now it's just very rough looking and everything. All right, the next component here is going to be the ears, right? So let's go back to the create shape tool, select these ear circles, curved profile. I'm only going to go 30 degrees on the curve this time, very shallow. No base height, no limit, meaning I want it to be a full dish, 30-degree dish, but I want to subtract it. Subtract and click apply. I didn't name it, I just left it the component 4, but click apply. Now, actually 30 degrees is a little bit too shallow. So let's go 60. Click apply. I'm doubling it up. Oh, 60 is a little bit much. Let's kind of split the difference and let's go 45. Click apply. There we go. All right, close that. Okay, now let's take a look in full 3D view. Here's our Mickey Mouse model up to this point. Now I want to add a draft. So all these straight edges and everything, I want to add that draft angle to everything, the whole thing, right? So I'm going to just leave everything on as it is, and I'm just going to go up to click on add a draft. And I'm going to go with a 22.5 degree draft, half of 45. And I'm going to click apply. So every straight edge around the ears, the face, the little riser on the face, the eyes, everywhere in the mouth, everywhere there's a straight edge, it's going to draft that edge. It's going to draft it. So it's going to generate and create that angle and everything. We'll see what 22 looks like. I may need to back it down to 15, but or 22.5, but let it regenerate. And yeah, that's good. Yep. Let's go. I'm going to show you. Let's go extreme for a minute. Okay. I'm going to go 30 degrees and let's zoom in a little bit on this. So we'll go 30 degrees and everything so you can see it. It's coming. 33% done, 35, 37. Now, all of these components, because we're just adding and subtracting from the previous components below, adding and subtracting depending on what it is, they're all on the same level. No need for this to go on a different level or anything. But the next step, you're going to see what I do with a second level. Okay, I'm going to keep it at the 30. I like the meat that it puts out there. Okay, so now we have all of our original components here, and then we have a brand new model with this 30-degree draft. So I'm going to insert a new level. I'm going to drag this model up with the draft because it's a whole complete model. And I'm going to turn off my original level. So all those originals, in case I need to go back and change them or do something with them or something, I can. They're there. I don't delete them. I don't get rid of them or anything like that. But when I did the draft, it created a brand new model, baked everything together, created a brand new model, and added the draft to it. So I do not need this model with draft visible as well as all of these visible. So I'm going to start a new level, and I'm going to have my original level. I'm going to uncheck it so it's not turned on. And now I'm working from here. I'm kind of working in stages, right? If I need to go back to the originals, I can. Now, this model with draft is going to get smoothed out. So we're going to turn on the smoothing. And the smoothing is going to break all the edges and everything here. And I'm going to give it just about a quarter bit of smoothing. See what my results are. Right? Look and see what my results are and all, and click OK. Now, big factor. I'm going to go back to my drawing here, and I'm going to hold down the Shift key, and I'm going to change my resolution. I'm going to increase it, and I'm going to regenerate this model. I should have done this kind of beforehand, but that's okay. It'll regenerate the entire model. And so now I've got those nice smooth edges and everything on that model and all. And so this is our Mickey Mouse model, right? So from that vector. And this is our composite model, right? Made from all of our components. The end result is the 3D composite model, right? 2.5D or 3D composite model. So now if I were carving this, I would just go over and I would create the 3D rough cut and 3D finish cut, the tool pass and all, but like that. So base foundation was first, added the interface perimeter, that interface added it to it. So it followed that curve. Mouth got subtracted from it, taken away. Tongue got added back because it kind of sticks out, right? Not sticks out, but it's in there. Nose, nice dome, right? Eye sockets, and then the kind of the eyes, brought out and everything. The ears kind of subtract that curve. Don't just subtract it in there. Little 30-degree draft on the whole thing, and then some smoothing. That completes our model. All right, everybody. Well, let me get the guys back up on the screen. Okay, what y'all think of that?
Good. What's your overall height on that thing?
Oh, yes. That's a great question. All right, so on this, if we go look at the model, I can do it. I'll do it over here. So the overall height on this is 0.6262. So I could carve it out of a 3/4 inch board.
You could also run your cursor over your nose, which is your highest point, and
Yes.
it'll tell you at the bottom there.
Well, it'll tell me in a negative. Let me click cancel on this. So when I'm on the model here, John, sorry. If I move to the top of the nose, that's 0.
Oh, okay.
Right? So as I come down, it shows me the depth, right? So if I kind of come to the bottom down here, that's my 0.6041. So the model height. So the very tip top is 0, the top of the board, right? Because I'm zeroed out on the material surface. If I were to change this to zeroing out on the machine bed, and I click OK, then I can come up here and it'll be the positive number, so this level 0.26, 0.38, 0.7490, that kind of thing. But since I'm zeroed out on the material surface,
it just gives you it helps you when you're building, so that you don't, when you go to do your model, you don't get that error.
Sure. Yes.
You can check it before you get to that point to make sure you're within the thickness of your material.
Yep. And also, and it also helps. We want to kind of, when we're building our components, we want to stay within, but at the end we could reduce the Z height of the model, but the thing of it is we lose some of our detail when we do that. But let's get back to the guys again. Sorry about that.
Hey, Lane, how does setting the zero plane work with the model itself?
Okay, so the zero plane is a virtual surface, right? So if I add a zero plane to the model, it's going to create a virtual surface, and that surface has 0 height to it. Let me bring my head out of the way at least.
Do you recommend setting that up, or?
No, not with this kind of model. With a concave, like a dish and everything, absolutely. But it's not necessary with this. The reason being is, let's say I was carving this, right? And I just want to carve this out because I'm going to cut it out. And I chose to use the model as the boundary. Well, the zero plane is the model, right? So it's going to consider this whole surface now the model. So I don't want it visible. I don't want it on. I don't want it in this. But I do want a zero plane in my model when I have a dish and everything, because I need a transition. I need that surface, that zero plane, and I need that dish to have a nice transition from that surface, right, to the dish. But with a component like this, all that's doing is creating that virtual background, which is not necessary, and it is not needed in this situation. Okay, but a dish, absolutely. I would recommend always having a zero plane with a dish. And a zero plane, ladies and gentlemen, is just a surface with a 0 height, right? There's no height and everything. And when it comes to a dish, it really helps with keeping components below the zero plane, so we don't have parts sticking up above our material, right? And we will talk about that in kind of the next phase of the 3D modeling. That gets a little bit more advanced, but we'll talk about that after. But this particular type of model, this extruded model, doesn't need a zero plane. So Ronnie, sorry, I didn't know. I know that didn't answer the question.
No, you did.
But that's
Thank you.
Yeah.
So late.
Who was that? JR?
Yeah.
Yep.
Not being a 3D guy yet, since that's a level 2 new component, and it sounded like it automatically baked it.
When we created the draft, it took all of those components and baked them together into a single component, created that brand new component, that baked component, and then it drafted that component.
So if we had to make any changes, we'd have to go back to the original and rebake.
Yep. You delete that model with the draft. You go back to level 1, make whatever changes you need to make, do it again.
Okay, so we could actually have 15 different levels with different draft degrees. Just
different different stages or different draft degrees for sure, right? Yep.
okay.
uh
I can see this being one of these things there. You just show your client the finished product and not tell them, hey, we can make it anything.
right. All right, ladies and gentlemen, it is 10:09. So any last minute questions in the chat? Got kind of quiet. I think I put you all to sleep on that last one. But if any last minute questions, let me know. Now's the time to ask them. But so in this instance, let me get rid of this zero plane real quick. In this instance, the entire vector of Mickey Mouse's head, all the vectors, they were utilized to create shapes, right? Those shapes, when they were made, they are called components. All of the components were made on level 1. There was no need to change levels at this time. So because we were just adding or subtracting from those, to create this entire component. We did not have 2 or more components that had to interact differently with the others. We needed them all to add or subtract to all of them, right? Once the components were all created, we then added a draft to them. So the software took all of those individual components and baked them like baking a cake, all the flours, eggs, and water and oil and all that stuff, baked it into one model and added the draft to it. That model with draft, rather than keep it on level 1, we moved it up to a new level, so it's all by itself, and we turned off the level below, the originals, and they're there in case we need them. Like JR said, if we have to go make changes or something, they're there if we need them. But they are no longer visible, so they're no longer part of our project at this particular point. They're still there, but they're just turned off. And now we have a brand new model with that draft, right? And now with this model, I can change the height of the model. I can scale the size of the model. I can do all of that stuff, right? If I scale this, make it bigger or smaller, it's not changing my originals. My originals are still my originals, right? I'm only working with what's visible. So larger, smaller, whatever. If I had to make changes, what I was telling JR just a minute ago, if I need to make changes for whatever reason, let's say I didn't want the ears to be dished so deep or something like that, then I would simply come in and I would delete this model with the draft. I would go into the ear components and I would make the change, and then I would redraft that changed component, right? I would redraft it and then move it back up there. So you're going to have different stages. You may have different stages where you might have to delete, go back to your originals, make some changes, or you might have, now I've got this Mickey Mouse, and let's say that Minnie was next to him, and, there was a heart for Valentine's Day, whatever the case may be, right? And I've got Mickey, I've got Minnie, and I've got this heart, and maybe I have them all on the same level, and I'm interacting with them, but I need to make changes in Mickey. Right, I might have to go back to level 1 to fix Mickey or something, whatever the case may be. But you could have different stages. So you can, and it doesn't matter how many levels you have, right? It doesn't matter how many levels you have. You can have 100 levels, and it's just a matter of the only reason you create them is if your components have to interact differently, or if you want to turn off like some originals. Let's say I had level 2 was all Minnie Mouse, right? All the vectors for Minnie Mouse was level 2. And then I created that merged, component or drafted component of a Minnie Mouse. I'd put her, she could probably be on the same level with Mickey, that final model, level 3, right? Could be those 2 heads. But level 2, all her original model components, and level 1, all of Mickey's model components, I might turn them off and they're separate, right? So it all depends on what we're doing and what we got going on, and how complex our model is in things. It can be very simple or it can be very complex. Now, I would like to talk about two little quick things that I want to talk about. When we've been in the properties of the models and everything, this window here, this property window, and we've changed the shape height or the base height, or we changed the combine mode, but there are two additional things in the properties of that spannel wrench, and it's called fade and tilt. Fade and tilt. Sometimes when we have more than one model, we might have to tilt or fade to make that model look like it's kind of in front of another. So in this example, just to real quick show you a fade and tilt, I'm going to create a duplicate of Mickey.
Blow yourself up.
I'm going to real quick. Let's go into here and go full. This is just a very simple. Nope, that was the wrong one. Boop. Let's blow the other one up. There we go. I've just created a duplicate of Mickey, so I can actually take the. Let's select one Mickey. Right over the other. Now, for this, for the moment, I no longer need the vectors, right? So I'm going to move them to another layer. I'm going to move the vectors to a new layer, and I'm going to turn the visibility of those vectors off. I want to keep them intact, but I want them in a different layer. But let me go back to here. Mickey, the actual model, I'm going to move that back to layer 1. I need him to stay on. I just need the vectors to go away. So now I have this model of Mickey, and I'm going to rotate him ever so slightly. Bear with me just a second. Double click to get him into transform mode. Rotate just a little bit. I'm going to take this Mickey head, rotate him just a little bit, and I'm going to bring this Mickey over just to kind of like right there. All right, let's go into the 3D view. Okay. Currently, right now, let's go full on 3D. I don't need to be in 2D view for that. Currently, right now, the second Mickey is merging with the first Mickey, meaning they're both keeping their shape. None of them are getting distorted or draping or subtracting or none of that stuff. They're both keeping their shape. They're just merging together, right? Well, I need this Mickey that's red. I need to give it the illusion that this head is in front of the other head. So I need to tilt Mickey a little bit. Now, when you tilt a model, it's like shoving a wedge under the model. Okay? There's a thin part of the wedge and a thick part of the wedge. So when we shove that wedge in, that thick part is going to lift up the model. So when I come in to tilt a model and I hit set, on my screen, when I hit the set button, there will be a, give me just a second here. Let me close. I got to close. Give me just a moment. I've got a tool open somewhere. I need to find out where it is. Okay, one more time. Let's go into the properties here. We're going to click on tilt. We're going to hit the set button. And the here. Let's go tilt. And said I was hitting the wrong one. By the way, ladies and gentlemen, where this menu on the left that I'm hitting the tilt and the set, nothing was happening. That's because it only functions in the 2D view. This window here, this settings window, the properties, it's in the 2D view. I was in the 3D view, so I need to click on the blue box at the very bottom of the Mickey that I have selected, and that's the same property window, but for the 3D view. So if I hit the set button here, I'll get the anchor that I was looking for 2 seconds ago. All right, so you see on the screen, there's a little anchor, and it's hard to see, but there's a number 1 next to that anchor, meaning it's kind of my first click. When I click one time and I move the mouse to another area and click a second time, that second anchor will have a number 2. So my first click is going to be the lowest part of the wedge, the thin part of the wedge. My second click is going to be the thick part of the wedge, right? So my first click needs to be over here on the left side of the face because I need that to be the thin part of the wedge. And my second click needs to be over here on the thick part of the face. That's where I need the thick part. I need to tilt it up there. So when I change the tilt angle and everything, now you can see that the Mickey on the left looks like it's in front of the Mickey on the right. And if I turn this to the side, in fact, that is the case. Now, my tilt probably did not need to be that extreme. So you got to think about, if I take this tilt, right, let's go to an extreme here for a second, right? If I'm shoving a big wedge under there, we don't want to, only tilt to the percentage that you need just to give the illusion that that model is in front of the other. So in this case, I don't need 13 degrees of tilt. I only really need that's good. 1.6 degrees of tilt to put the, well, nope. You see there, Mickey's ear is still poking through. The bottom Mickey's ear is still poking through. So I need to go to, let's go to 1.8 on that degree. 1.8, still poking through. 2.4. So I had to tilt 2.4 degrees. So his, there's no model, none of the bottom models showing through the top model, right? So that gives the illusion that he's in front and everything. So that's the tilt function. So when we have, like, let's say we're building a deer scene, we got log cabins and trees and deer and all. And let's say we have pine trees and we have a deer standing in front of those pine trees. Well, if the models are about the same thickness, then the trees are gonna be going through the deer, right? And everything. So we need to tilt that deer out so it has a little bit of kind of back meat or whatever, so it looks like it's standing in front of the trees, right? That kind of thing. Yeah. So we're tilting.
If you say you're by tilting that one, say you tilted that much and it was thicker than your material, couldn't you tilt the first one down, that where they meet, like tilt the first, the one on the right, tilt that down, down, and that way you wouldn't have to raise the other one quite as high?
Right. So it won't be called a tilt, okay? Because a tilt is like shoving a wedge under the model. So there's no tilting down. It's only up, right? So it would be a fade. That's the next thing. So what John is saying is, if I look at my model now here, remember, let's say that I'm carving this out of a 3/4 inch board. Now my model is 0.7907 inches thick, and I got an error saying that it's bigger than my model, right? Or my board. The model's bigger than the material. I could change the model height. I could squish it down, right? I could say 0.74 and just make it small enough to fit in my board. But you remember if you ever reduce the height of a model, you're sacrificing detail. So as it pushes it down, it kind of flattens out the detail a little bit, depending on how much detail there is. So we're going to do it both ways. We're going to do the fade, what John's referring to, and we're going to do the Z height scale. So if I change the Z height of my model, let's say to 0.74, sorry, 0.74, and I apply that, it's going to reduce that down, and it might be only a reduction enough to where I no longer have an error, right? And I didn't lose a whole lot of detail on the model. But think about this. Think if my model was 1.5 inches thick and I'm trying to carve it out of a 1-inch board, and I try to flatten it down that 1/2 inch to get it under, 1, I'm losing a lot of detail. I'm really squishing it down. I'm just like flattening it down, like somebody shoving their hand in your face, right? Flattening it down. So option number 2, what John was talking about, and I'm going to hit undo on that, undo that component height. Let me hit OK on this real quick. Undo scale Z height. I want that error back there, right? So we got that error. What John's talking about is he said, hey, can I tilt? He used the word tilt. Can I tilt the left one or the right one down so I don't have to tilt the right one up so much, so I don't, sacrifice that detail and stuff? And you can't tilt down, but you can fade. You can fade. So tilt is always up. It's like shoving a wedge under the material. So we have, if I come into this component here, oops, and let's get into the full view here. And I click on the blue box for this component. We have an option called fade. Fade. Now, when I hit the set button for fade, again, I have an anchor with a number 1, and I have an anchor with a number 2. After I click one click, then the anchor with number 2. Now, my first click this time, let's not get confused here. Tilt. First click is the thin part of the wedge. Second click is the thick part of the wedge, right? Which way are you shoving the wedge into that model? Click, click. Thin, thick. Fade. First click is the area of the model that we want to keep at its original. Second click is where we want to fade. We want it to start disappearing. So if I come over to the right side here and I click once, and I come over to the left side and I click the second time, when I fade this model, let me come in here, it fades. You can see it's kind of almost like that tilt down, John. I don't know if you can see that on the screen, but it's kind of like that tilt down. It's fading down. Now I'm going to turn the fade. It by default, as soon as you fade, it's 50%, right? I don't need 50% of fade, but I'm going to bring that down to, let's say, 18%. You should have seen it lift up. Let's do that extreme again. Let's go in here and let's go watch the left side of the right Mickey. A 4% fade. If I change that to 29%, it's going to fade down. It's going to tilt down. So I really only need, I'm going to go 15% of the fade here. We'll just do 16. I'm not going to try to hit 15. I could just type it in, by the way, too. I could type in the number, 15%. So I'll do that. Now I can close this and I can go back to my other Mickey. Click on the blue box to get his property box. And I can, let's zoom in here. Let's kind of focus on the ear up there in the ear there. I can now reduce his height a little bit. Okay. And I'm going to actually go 2.0. Wait for it. we go. And now if I go look at my material setup and my model thickness and everything, by tilting one and reducing the height and everything, I'm still at 0.76 there, right? So I need to fade a little bit more and bring this down a little bit more. So let's come into, let's hit cancel for just a second. Let's go back into the property box of these guys. And I'm going to crank him down to 1.8. Oops. 1.8. Okay. And then I'm going to come over to the other Mickey. Sorry. Click on the blue box. Double click on the blue box here to get his properties. And I'm going to change his fade. Instead of 15%, I'm going to go a little bit more. Let's go 22%. Wait for it. It should be, I need enough fade that the ear doesn't show through. That's good. Close. Okay. So the ear's not showing through. Now if I go back to my properties, let's see if we're kind of in, you know, in our target and everything. So we are. So now I'm at, my model is 0.7461. So tilt and fade is the properties, so that, you know, fade is kind of, it disappears the model. Let's think of it, we'll call it, we can kind of just for mental sake, we can call it like a tilt down. It's just not a tilt, you know, but it brings that, it fades it away, right? From the original model, it fades it down. Tilt is like shoving a wedge, so it always lifts up, right? So tilt and fade. And now we have the two models that look like, because of the tilt and fade, it looks like that one's in front of the other, right? Kind of.
It gives you the option to give you a couple thousandths over the top of your model so that you don't get a flat spot, say like on his nose.
Right, correct. All right, well, ladies and gentlemen, that is it. We ran over 30 minutes. Sorry about that, but I just really wanted to, that's kind of that's the conclusion of the properties. In that property box, that spanner wrench, when we have a model selected, we changed shape height, we added a little base height, we changed combine mode, add and subtract, but we didn't talk about those two components, tilt and fade. Now that kind of completes the big picture, right, of that particular tool, right? Because that's an important tool. The properties tool of each component is very important. It's where we can change shape heights, where we can add meat underneath, where we can tilt and fade, and we can change how they combine with one another. All that happens in that property box with that spanner wrench. It all happens there after the model's component is created, you know, so that's a very important box to know what it all does. All right, everybody. Well, I hope you enjoyed this class. I hope everything, I hope this was a good beginner course to kind of give you a little bit of more insight on things. And we will continue this series and we'll step up, you know, learning a little bit more and more as we go. So until next time, gentlemen, John, JR, Ronnie, Charlie, hopefully you enjoyed the class, but thanks for hanging out with me. And I'm gonna before as I sign off here, I'm just going to come in here and throw this up on the screen. I just want to thank everybody that has, all of you, everybody as our valued members of Spindle TV. Your support is greatly appreciated. I can't say that enough. It's greatly appreciated, and I appreciate everything you do, and hopefully you feel like it's worth every penny. But we will continue this series. We're going to talk about other things. The list that you guys gave me last week, inlays, working with lasers and 3D modeling and things like that. great list, right? It gave me a lot to work with, but this, I thought we need a foundation to work from, right? So this is our foundation. Hopefully it came out that way or came across that way, and we'll see you guys and girls next week. Now, listen, hey, just a heads up to everybody that might be still listening. The 19th, our Wednesday class on the 19th, that class is going to get removed to a different day. I don't know what day yet. I think it's going to be Thursday. But I have a live event that I have to do that for Digital Woodcarver that happens on that Wednesday. So we're going to move our Wednesday class to a different night, okay? But let me get rid of that and say our goodbye. So Wednesday the 19th will not be a class on Wednesday the 19th. We will have a class that week. It just won't be Wednesday. I'll figure out it'll probably be Thursday, but just keep that in your mind. All right, everybody. We'll see you next week.
Good night, Lanny.
Have a wonderful day. Good night, guys. Thanks for hanging out with me this late. I know it was a long night, but thank you.
Good stuff.
See ya.
Have a